There is a version of you that you have met before, briefly, in flashes, in the moment you handled something harder than you expected, in the conversation where you said exactly what needed to be said. In the day, everything flowed. Decisions came easily, energy held, presence was total. You have been that person. Not consistently, not on demand, but you have been there. And you remember how it felt. That version of you is not a mood. It is not luck. It is not the exception. It is who you actually are when the noise is low enough and the belief is high enough and the interference has been cleared. Your best self is not a future person. It is not someone you will become after more healing, more achievement, more years of doing the work. It is the version of you that is available right now, underneath the doubt, underneath the fatigue, underneath the accumulated weight of everything that has been layered on top of who you actually are. This session does not build your best self. It clears the path to the one that is already there. Take a breath long enough to feel the day drop away from your shoulders, and speak today as that version of you, the one you have glimpsed in your best moments, choosing right now to become your consistent reality. Read each line as the person you are when everything is working, when you are clear, capable, present, and fully yourself. Speak from there. Let the words call that version of you forward into this moment. I am rising, not into someone I have never been, but into the fullest, most consistent expression of who I have always been capable of being. I release every habit, belief, and pattern that belongs to a smaller version of me, one I have outgrown but not yet fully let go of. My best self is not reserved for my best days. It is available in every moment I choose to call it forward. I choose to operate from my highest self today, in the way I speak, decide, move, rest, and show up for everything this day asks of me. I release the ceiling I have been living under, the invisible upper limit I placed on my own potential before I knew it was a choice. Rising does not mean becoming someone else. It means removing everything that has been preventing me from being fully, visibly, consistently myself. I am the person I have glimpsed in my best moments, and I am choosing, right now, to make that person my everyday reality. I release the comfort of staying small because small is familiar, because growth, even toward the life I want, can feel disorienting in ways I have not always been prepared for. Not waiting to feel like my best self before acting like them. Acting like them until the feeling follows, because it always does. I choose discipline. Not the harsh, punishing kind, but the loving commitment of someone who respects themselves enough to do what they said they would. I release the version of me that talked myself out of my own potential at the last moment, who got close and then retreated to the safety of the known. My best self is generous, clear-eyed, patient with others, and uncompromising about what genuinely matters. I am choosing all four right now. I choose to treat my time as a reflection of my values, to give the best hours to the most important work rather than the most urgent noise. I release the apathy that creeps in when progress feels slow, the giving up in small, quiet, barely noticeable ways that compounds into inertia. Rising into my best self is not a single act of willpower. It is 1,000 small choices made daily that accumulate into a person I am proud to be. I choose presence, full, undivided, genuinely inhabiting this moment, as the foundation of everything my best self does. I release the distraction economy that has been fragmenting my attention and preventing me from ever giving my full self to anything long enough to see what it could become. My best self does not need external validation before showing up. They show up first and let the results speak in their own time. I choose to honor my energy, to protect it, restore it, and direct it toward the things that call forth the best of what I have to offer. I release the imposter who has been sitting in the seat of my best self, performing competence while carrying the private belief that the real thing is still somewhere ahead. The best version of me is honest, with myself, with others, about what I need, what I will not accept, and what I am genuinely committed to building. I choose to begin each part of my day as my best self would, with intention, with clarity, and with the full weight of who I am available to whatever comes next. I release the fragmented self, the one who shows up differently depending on the audience, the one who has learned to modulate and minimize, and I become the same person in every room. My best self is not immune to hard days. They are built for them. They know how to move through difficulty without losing the thread of who they are. I choose to invest in the things that make my best self sustainable: sleep, nourishment, stillness, connection, not as luxuries, but as the foundation everything else is built on. I release every relationship, habit, and environment that makes it harder to be my best self rather than easier, knowing that the people and places I surround myself with are either lifting or lowering my standard. Rising into my best self is an act of service to my family, my community, my purpose, because the best version of me has more to give than any diminished version ever could. I choose to be someone who keeps their word to others, and most importantly to myself, because self-trust is the bedrock of everything my best self is built on. I release the endless postponement. The I will start being my best self when the I will step up after. And I begin the only place beginning is ever possible. Here, I am rising. Not someday. Not in the version of my life where everything is easier. Right now, in this one, with what I have, as who I am. Rising. Your best self is not waiting for these manifestations to land. They are already speaking them. Step fully into that version of you right now and receive what they are claiming on your behalf. I manifest a life that consistently calls forth the best of who I am, work that challenges me, relationships that elevate me, and a daily rhythm that sustains the version of me I am becoming. I manifest the complete and permanent replacement of my smallest habits with the ones my best self would have chosen all along. I manifest a version of discipline so rooted in self-respect that it never needs to be forced, that doing what I said I would becomes the most natural expression of who I am. I manifest that the glimpses I have had of my best self, those brief, brilliant flashes, become my baseline, my default, my unremarkable ordinary. I manifest complete freedom from the upper limit, the invisible ceiling I unconsciously placed on my own potential, so that rising no longer triggers the self-sabotage that used to pull me back. I manifest a morning so intentional and so owned that the best version of me is the one who shows up for the rest of the day, not the one who has to be coaxed forward from behind the noise. I manifest relationships that are worthy of my best self, people who bring out my highest qualities rather than accommodating my lowest habits. I manifest a career, a creative practice, or a body of work so aligned with who I am at my best that it becomes the most honest thing I have ever built. I manifest the specific version of energy, physical, mental, emotional, that allows my best self to show up consistently rather than only in the gaps between depletion. I manifest complete healing from the experiences that first convinced me my best self was occasional, conditional, or not quite trustworthy enough to rely on. I manifest a standard of self-talk so elevated and so kind that the internal voice becomes the greatest ally my best self has ever had. I manifest that rising into my best self creates a ripple, that the people closest to me feel the shift and are quietly given permission to rise alongside me. I manifest the courage to be my best self in the rooms where it is most uncomfortable, in the conversations that matter most, in the moments when it would be easier to shrink. I manifest a body so well cared for, so rested, and so nourished that it becomes a tool worthy of everything my best self is trying to build with it. I manifest that every decision I make from this moment is made by my best self. Not my most anxious self, not my most depleted self, but the clearest, most grounded, most capable version of me. I manifest complete freedom from the comparison that has been measuring the quality of my best self against other people's highlight reels and finding me lacking. I manifest a life so fully inhabited by my best self that people who knew the smaller version of me can barely reconcile the two. I manifest the specific opportunities that were always waiting for the version of me I am becoming, arriving now because I have finally become them. I manifest a creative and professional output so reflective of my best self that it outlasts me. That what I build in this season carries the fingerprint of someone who was operating at full capacity. I manifest complete integration, the end of the gap between who I am in my best moments and who I am in my most ordinary ones. I manifest that choosing my best self becomes easier with every repetition, that each day I show up as them. The return journey from lesser versions grows shorter. I manifest a legacy built not from who I performed myself to be, but from who I actually was when I was most fully, most honestly, most completely myself. I manifest the financial circumstances, the time freedom, and the environmental conditions that make it possible for my best self to operate without the constant friction of basic needs competing for the same energy. I manifest that my best self shows up in the small moments, in how I greet people, how I respond to difficulty, how I treat my own body at the end of a long day, not only in the grand ones. I manifest a life in which rising is not an effort, but an identity, where being my best self is not something I have to remember to do, but simply who I am. I manifest complete release from every version of me that was built for survival rather than flourishing, and the full installation of the one that was built for a life worth living. I manifest that this session marks the day the gap between my best self and my everyday self began closing for good. I manifest a version of this life so fully lived, so completely inhabited by the best of who I am, that when I look back on it, there is nothing I wish I had held less back. I manifest every quality of my best self, the clarity, the courage, the discipline, the generosity, the presence, becoming the permanent texture of how I move through the world. I manifest my best self, not as an aspiration, not as a distant ideal, but as the person standing here right now, speaking these words, already living this life. If this session reconnected you to a version of yourself you had been drifting from, subscribe. Come back every day. Your best self is not built in a single session. It is built in the daily decision to choose them over the smaller, louder, more familiar alternative. Like this video, every like sends this session to someone who is ready to rise but has not yet found the words for what rising looks like. You could give them those words today. Share this with someone whose best self you have seen and who may have temporarily lost sight of it. Sometimes the most powerful thing one person can do for another is simply say, "I see who you are at your best." This will remind them